start checking it before we
Yep,
come.
okay, let's go ahead.
Call this meeting to order. I'd like to have an adoption of today's agenda.
I so move.
Second. Moved and second to adopt the agenda. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right. First item is the Visitor Center sign. And Ella, did you want?
Yes, sir. In your package, you'll see a mock-up of a sign that I'm getting estimates on. I still don't have anything, but this is what we were looking at doing, but we're going to need to do these in 3 different locations. We'll need to put one at the former Visitor Center sign, at Gladys's, and also turning in up here at Sky Valley to let people know that the Visitor Center is here. There will be an additional sign here, but it will be different. We're doing something similar to what her new sign is going to be outside. But I just wanted to let council know what is transpiring, and as soon as we get these estimates, I'll get with you and let you know what's going on with this, and we can move forward with these signs.
Ella, how big will they be?
I'm looking at the main one at the Visitor Center. I'm looking to do like a 3x5, 3 foot by 5 foot is my estimated amount. He's looking at it to see how it's going to look as far as the layout of it, and then they're gonna get back with me. Because sometimes you sort of have to stretch them out according to your graphics on them, and he's looking to see what he can do with that, and will let me know.
Okay. My only concern is that the information that this is the visitor center is down at the bottom, and it's fairly small type.
But that's what I'm saying, you put this
Yeah.
on a 3x5 sign, it's gonna be pretty good size lettering.
Okay, well, I just suggest figuring out what that size is, and then, you know, stepping back 100
yeah,
yards
definitely.
and seeing if you can read it.
Right, definitely,
Because
oh
people
yeah.
will be moving fast on the
Yeah,
highway.
that's the thing, we wanna make sure you can see it, so that's the thing. And this is not set in stone, so if y'all decide y'all don't like this, y'all wanna do something different, we can always do something different. The one concern I have is it is a rather dark background.
Mhm.
I'm waiting to see the true mock-up of it. I know we have the one sign, but looking at it on paper and seeing a true mock-up of the sign is totally different. So, and once I get that, I'll look at that and go from there and let you all know if we decide to do some changes or whatever. I just wanted to bring you up to date with the signage that we have going on.
Thank you.
My initial, may I have a comment? My initial thought when I see it,
Mhm,
and it's the visitor center sign,
mhm.
is that the visitor center and next right or whatever ought to be maybe not the largest thing, but certainly next to the largest thing and really stand out.
That's what I'm
And I
saying,
agree-
this is
I
just.
agree with the background could be lighter blue and so forth.
Yeah, once I get a true mock-up, I'll let you all know. We can always play with the actual font and make sure it's what we want. Because I even had some suggestions as far as, I don't like the small letters on the SV on the Sky Valley, I think, and the G.
Yeah,
I think that's totally inappropriate, but we're looking at changing that as well, so he is going to do that for me.
yeah, that's true. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah,
I was
most
focused
people
on
don't
just
notice
visitor
that.
center and where is it and how big is it?
Right,
Okay.
right.
All right.
Al?
I was going to say that I agree with what Jim Curtis said and what Neil Howard said. I think the impetus of the sign is the visitor center, and that should be the largest fonts. And then, you know, whether it's visitor center above Sky Valley or Sky Valley and then visitor center, they should be at least equal. I think what we're trying to project is we have a visitor center, and that's what we're trying to draw people's attention to. And that almost like Sky Valley is part of it, but it's secondary. It's the visitor center first.
Okay.
Maybe visitor center should be the first thing. And then, you know, it's kind of mounted.
We can definitely
Yeah.
do that. I'll call and talk with them today and get that straightened out. So, to give us a couple of options how to lay it out. Because they can play with those graphics pretty easy.
You have anything?
So, the other thing with this 3 feet by 5 foot sign,
Mm-hmm.
we would need a variance on the ordinance, right?
No, not for that size. We
No,
were good.
that would still be within the,
Mhm. Yes, sir.
what was it, 54?
I think it's, I can't remember right offhand. I know you and I looked at it. I'll verify that too
Okay.
before we order anything.
Okay.
I think we were, if I'm remembering right, the 3 to 5 was gonna get us where we needed to be.
Have you got any rough costs of?
That's what I was saying. I have not gotten my estimates back. I'm waiting on those, so we're not doing anything until I get that back. I just wanted to let you all know that y'all keep talking about this and wanting it done, and I'm trying to get estimates on it, so. It takes them a while because they want to see what all they got to do to get one that, you know, to do 3 different signs this size is what they're looking at.
All right, the next item is the lots for sale. We've talked about this before, we brought it back because, and we have inquiries from different realtors about different lots. All we can do is just talk about whether we want to sell all our lots, and if we do, then that's, and have, other than just say yes, let's sell all.
Well, there'll be 3 of these we'll pull from this list right off the get-go. There's 2 that are across from the entrance, that's 058A, 121 and 122. And also 58C201, we have a water tank on, so we've got to pull that one. But in the meantime, before we actually move forward with this, we found out there is a tax lien on one of these, so therefore I am going to request that our attorney, which is absent today, to do a title search on these others, because I think we may have some outstanding liens on these that we need to be made aware of, because some of these were deeds of gift, and evidently title searches were not completed when they deeded them over to us. So I want to verify that information before I try and sell anything.
Also, there, 204A,
Mhm.
if we sell that, then those lots are landlocked, you can't, there's no road frontage, so the other 5 or 6 lots. in that
Right,
street.
those others,
Probably should
yeah.
keep that until we can figure out.
207 is
The
blocked
road
by
belongs to
204A.
Right, they are. Mhm.
Okay. So if we have an offer on some of those properties for 204A, either we ought to take off of it what's blocking 207, or ask them to buy that lot as well.
One thing we
There's several
could,
things we could do.
well, and the other thing we could do is take the 204A, and with the other lots, we could actually reappropriate the road frontage for that to go with those lots. We'd have to get a new survey done, but we could change that so that does away with the 204A and adds it to the other lots for the frontage.
Okay.
We could do that as well.
Yeah,
That might be a better solution in the long run, is to do that. I just wanted him to do these title searches on these first, because I don't want us to get in the situation when we try and sell these and we find out there's outstanding things on them, and we'll be in a, you know, we wouldn't make any money if we find that out. So that's why I wanted to do that, have him do title searches on these.
that makes sense to me.
Will we have the information by next week?
No, sir, there's no way he'll get those title searches done by that time. No, I can tell you right now, no, because he's gonna have to come in, you know, into town to do that, and he is not in town, so it's probably gonna be next month.
Would, how long would, what's the process for splitting up 204A or
What
cutting
would-
off a piece of that? You know, how
Um,
long does that take?
It doesn't. You
Okay.
just have to have it resurveyed, and what you would do is just replat it.
Okay.
And so all you could do is just replat it and put it with those particular lots. And we would need to do that prior to listing them as well, if that's what y'all want to do, because I'd have to separate them out to show the actual, footage on each lot, you know, the acreage on each lot. You wanna get a more accurate account of it.
Right. So,
You've also got those, on paper, there was a road there.
Mhm.
And whether or not that road was ever deeded to the city, I don't know what the status of that road is.
None of those, and like you and I talked about earlier, Moody, there's quite a few roads in Sky Valley that don't say that they're ours, and they don't have any form of ownership on them too, so. I
Yeah.
mean, that's why, when you start doing these title searches, it will show up a lot of the information where the original deed, because more than likely he's gonna have to go back to the original plat, when the original plat was done, and that's gonna give him more information that's gonna show when it was originally platted and why some of this was divided the way it was. Because it, more than likely, it was all one.
Yeah, that was gonna be
parcel at one time.
originally.
Yeah, you know, more than likely it was, and then it was split up, is normally what happens with these areas like this. Because I actually had one guy that came in and looked, and then he's the one that was telling me, he went and looked, and he said one of them has a tax lien on it.
okay. Now, in terms of the additional cost of, you know, surveying and title searches and so on, that raises the question of, are we just trying to get these back on the tax roll, and we're trying to clear them off the books, or, I mean, I don't think we're trying
No,
to
no,
get,
we wanna get them back on the tax.
okay. So we're not looking for top dollar, we're looking for a quicker sale.
Well, what I would recommend at this point, if y'all wanna move forward with this, is the first thing before we even get Doug to do the title searches, let me talk to the surveyor and see what he's gonna charge us to replat this with this other lot in front.
Okay,
If y'all wanna do that, and that may take a week or so to get that information, because I know those surveys are extremely busy around here. They're,
Okay.
they're months out sometimes.
okay. I'm also concerned that, well, not concerned really, but is it safe to assume that the county's not gonna reappraise all of our lots based on these sales? I'm thinking that these sales are going to occur at prices significantly below the current assessed value.
Now,
But-
vacant lots, it doesn't work that way on assessments.
Okay, I didn't think it would, looking at the history of it.
Normally
But
not, no.
my sense is that, well, because there aren't very many land sales, and even though, you know, the name of the game in land is, you know, have deep pockets, be prepared to wait until somebody comes up with, you know, the use value
Yeah,
as
y'all
a
just
site
need
for
to
a
be
home.
realistic in what you think you're gonna get for the
Yeah.
lots. If y'all thinking you're gonna get $20,000 and $30,000, that's not realistic.
No, I agree. In fact, I think, you know, just as a ballpark, I'm thinking that maybe, you know, half the appraised value would be maybe a reasonable asking price. Because, you know, we haven't had many homes built recently, and until homes start building, then the land values aren't really gonna get to their potential. And that means that you're gonna be selling to speculators or interested homeowners nearby. Maybe somebody wants to cut a tree, maybe somebody doesn't want the tree cut. Maybe somebody wants to preserve their privacy. These aren't necessarily the best lots available in Sky Valley, and so I'm thinking that the prices, if we're gonna be successful and move them, we're gonna have to give people the incentive to buy. I don't know if that's the thinking of others on the council, but that's my concern.
All right, well, I'll get that information together, and it'll
Okay.
be, we'll just put it on for the July work session again. I'll have
Okay.
more information.
And while we're taking time, I'm sorry, Bob, did I interrupt?
Are you still on this subject?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
That is, if we're gonna do the title searches and the surveys, maybe we could hire an appraiser, not as an appraiser, because that's gonna be a little more expensive, but as a consultant, to give us an indication.
Well,
as
you're
to
putting in
what-
a lot of money to property that you may not even recoup your money, the more you, that's why I wanna get these prices first, because we may decide we don't wanna do all this to even try and sell these lots. We may be better off to just keep them as they are. Cause you start talking, you know, to a surveyor, even to come out and survey these lots, I'm just ballparking, you may be $6,000-7,000 right off the bat, you
Yeah.
know? I mean, you gotta, that's why I wanna get the estimates before we do anything else.
Yeah, maybe most of them don't need to be surveyed, maybe it's just the ones up on, excuse me, Wellbird Lane.
Yeah, that's the ones I'm talking about. I'm not talking about surveying them all. I don't need them all surveyed, just these in that area.
Okay, but one way to know whether
Most
it's,
of them are not even buildable, in my opinion.
I'm sorry,
I wouldn't want to.
Saying they're not really buildable, which
Yeah.
most of them.
yeah, I agree. And I think the appraiser can also point that out, and then we don't have to figure it out. That, you know, some of them are, you know, gonna be cheaper than others.
Yeah, and then most of them are gonna be adjoining property owners, of somebody that has property that's gonna want them anyway.
Yeah.
It's
But-
not like you're gonna have somebody coming in and try and buy them off the street. You're not gonna have that.
Okay, and what's our annual take on these that we're not collecting now? Yes, the total assessed value is, I think, $195,000.
Right.
Village rate is 35.71,
Mhm.
so that's $7,000 a year? Is
Yeah,
that- is
yeah.
that-
I
okay,
mean,
just-
that's pretty much, and that, you know, I'm just guessing that's probably what it's gonna cost us to see if we even wanna do this or not, so, you know. Before I talked with anyone, I wanted to make sure y'all were on the same track and were agreeing with what I wanted to do. Because as you see, Doug says we can do this. I just, you know, before we move forward, we need to make sure we've got everything done that we need to get done.
Right.
All right, moving on, item 5, we're going to bypass item 5 because we don't have any cost per se. We have a rough one of 100 and some odd, 175 an hour, but we have no, we don't know yet because we haven't gone out and checked our streets to find out which one we definitely need to have work done on.
I did get, in reference to that, I did get one more estimate yesterday. He gave me an estimate of 125. That was late yesterday afternoon when I got that, so I did not send that to you, but that's Precision Paving that has done our paving in the past. I talked to John yesterday, and he did email me a price of 125. So I told him once we got our list, we would be getting with him. And I'm thinking what we may need to do on this is do a not to exceed amount like we've done previously. Because this is gonna be rather expensive. This is something that's gonna cost.
Well, that's why we have to get out on the street.
Yeah, once y'all
And
get
check-
this,
and
and
check 'em
if, when you're doing your list, if you can actually do some, mileage too, or, you know, at least footage, we're gonna need something to give them some idea. You
Yeah.
know? Because some are gonna need more work than others as well.
On these estimates, 125 or 175 per hour. The first one that we got didn't have any indication any places to whether there was gonna be 1 man working or 10 men.
That's a crew, his was a crew, and also the 125 told me that would be, the side of the road prep and also for, the ditch repair as well. Because when you start talking about this, you may have some shoulders on the road that you've got to improve along the way. It's not just digging ditches, you've got to go in and secure your sides of the road as well.
Is this something that we would wanna do like we did with Allenberg and the trees, and have our public works crew assist this crew in any way?
I talked with John about that yesterday. He said he didn't think that would be necessary for him. He said he would rather just get his equipment out here and do with what he has. The other guy, he's big enough, he's got like 40 people that work for him, so I'm sure that's why he gave us the 175 price tag. Because originally, Moody, this is the gentleman that we had talked to, and he was gonna give me some estimates, and all he did was just shoot me this after I heard back from him, so I don't know why he changed his mind all of a sudden. Cause he was gonna come
Yeah,
up
they're
and
gonna
look,
come and look.
and he never did come and look, so that was his initial thing, he was gonna come look and do all this and never did.
Well, we have nothing we can really talk about or act on.
Right.
Mm-mm.
My
No,
opinion,
not
yeah, we
really,
gotta
not
get-
really.
There's nothing been defined as to.
All right, item number 6.
We do not have the additional information, I'm still waiting on that bid. What is going on with our current leak vac? The guys came in last week and said that they needed to order a $1,500 part, and I'm like, no, we spent enough money on this. As most of you know, we've had trouble with our leak vac over the years. It has been down more than it's actually worked, unfortunately. So what we did was, I contacted Paul, because I knew Paul had talked to the original company where we purchased this from, Bonnell. And I contacted Bonnell, and we've sent him pictures, our current one, to see what we could get for a trade-in value. I am still waiting to hear back on the estimate for a replacement for that. So until we get that, we really can't do anything with this one as well. He had told me he thought we would have something, but I just cannot see continuing to dump money into a piece of equipment that we've had nothing but trouble with since we've had it.
Ella,
Mhm.
in the packet, there was a picture of, it looked like the new one that we're planning on getting, but it was the same company.
It is. There's
Yeah.
only one company that makes them.
Okay, but it looked very similar to me to the one that we have. and I
The
was
one
wondering
that
if you
we're
could
looking
explain
at
the
now, they
differences.
suggested instead of doing a side, chute on it is to do the rear chute, because they said they don't have as many problems with the one on the rear as they do the ones on the side, and it's because of the arm on them. And that's where we've had a lot of trouble with ours, is the arm on the side, they've had to re-weld it.
That's the input arm, where we suck up the
Right,
leaves.
that arm has been the trouble, so that's why we're suggesting we do the one from the rear, that we would be better off with our locale and what we're using it for. And also too, Paul, in talking about the leaves, Paul and I have talked about this, is we need to be looking at doing something different with our leaves. We do have an awful lot of leaves here, but some of this needs to be on property owners as well. Everybody's so used to just blowing them in the ditches, but we do have an ordinance that says that people are not to clog up the culverts, which is what has happened repeatedly. So that's something that we really need to enforce, and come up with a different plan of action to do this. I think that's something we really need to think about. I know, the falls, everybody just thinks, well, you just blow them in the ditch, the city comes by and picks them up. That's good and well, but in reality, it shouldn't all just be on the property owner, on the city. The property owners ought to take some pride and say, hey, I don't want to clog up my ditches. Let's have a certain area where we locate the leaves and let the city pick them up from there. I think that's a better solution than just blowing them in the ditch.
I think I would agree with you if we were a city where most people live here full-time. But really, we're a second home community, and at least the majority. And if people aren't here all the time, and with our demographics, I'm wondering if, maybe the city should sort of up our game a little bit and be able to pull those leaves out of the ditch. Dumping them in the woods is one thing.
Well, the only problem with
bagging
that
them
is our personnel is limited as it is. We have 5 people that maintain 28 miles of road, and people tend to forget that. In every
You're right.
one of these roads, you have to think about the ditches are on both sides of the road.
Mhm.
And we have ditches that they're having to maintain and get leaves out for 28 miles times 2. And you think about that. That's a lot of work for just 5 people.
Yeah, well, what I would propose is that, okay, we've got the police department fully staffed. we've pretty much taken care of the fire department. Maybe going forward, we ought to be looking at the public works area.
And we are.
And I think we've got a backlog of work now in terms of the shagginess of some of the trees overhanging the streets. I think in the fall, you know, I don't know for sure, but I think the mowing slows down, so we've got a little more ability to do the leaves. But, you know, to come up with a backlog with that and ditches.
Yeah, we'll get
maybe
into that when we
ought to
start
look at
talking
more-
budget, because I've come up with some ideas that we're gonna discuss at, you know, when we start talking budget, because that is a main concern.
Okay.
The crew knows everything you've been talking about, they've been
Sure.
working here long enough.
Absolutely.
They know all this stuff. Our superintendent should have a plan for certain times a year to do certain things.
Mhm.
Now, as far as your leaves and everything, a lot of times it isn't the homeowner, it's the person he's hired to do this. So we probably could inform people that do the yard work and stuff that you put your leaves in a certain pile instead of start pulling down. So we're gonna have this problem. I don't care if we knock on every door and tell them to put the leaves here, they're still gonna put them over here. And,
Well,
they're gonna do what they do. So
I think practically, putting the leaves in the ditches is the easiest place to put them, to pick them up.
It
You
is.
can't go up into somebody's yard with that machine.
Yeah, no,
But we just need to know that they're there, because the people will hire somebody to come back in April to blow their leaves in the ditch. They don't necessarily do it in the fall. And, our guys are out cutting grass, and they don't even know that these things are stopped up. Here comes a big hard rain and they wash down, so I think we need to have the homeowners maybe notify us when they intend to put the leaves in the ditch so we can plan removal.
now, a lot of the leaves are old leaves,
Oh, yeah.
they're wet and everything. And
The sooner
probably
you get them,
it's our, when we go to pick them up, we have one guy going ahead with a rake and raking up the bank, pull the bank down and pull the stuff up into piles going down the road, so that when you come in with your leaves,
Yeah, they're much easier,
suck them up in one spot.
it's much easier to get them up when they're new and dry,
Right.
before they lay there for
Yeah.
2 months.
And we may decide, you know, we may look at this as an alternative, not doing another leaf vac. Y'all may decide you wanna do something different. The guys, you know, may be better served with another piece of equipment instead of the leaf vac. I mean, with the trouble that we've had with it, I'm all for that, cause I just don't know that the leaf vac is the way for us to go, because we do have the number of leaves that we have. We may need to look at some other alternatives.
Well, let me tell you, one alternative a lot of cities use, and they don't have ditches necessarily. It's the homeowner's responsibility to get rid of the leaves, and the city dictates what kind of bag you will use to put those leaves in, and how you will stack them for the city to pick them up.
True, that is true, and
Just
that is an
remember that.
alternative, yeah, that is an alternative that we could do. And I know that would not sit well with a lot of our property owners here, but that is an alternative for us to look at, because that's much easier.
Well, it's easier for the city.
Well, it's actually much easier for the property owner too, because let me tell you what happens with that. Because I came from a city that you were required to do this. What you had to do is, because we had an established area, but certain times of the year, you had to bag items, and if you did not bag them, they didn't touch them. But it actually helped you go ahead, clean up what you had it set aside, and on certain days, that's what they came by and picked up. Like it was, a Wednesday was called a commingle day, which meant they would get other stuff besides just leaves, but that's what they had, was an area established for that. And it really helped, because it allows you to go ahead and clean up and you're done.
my experience, I'll do personal first and city second, but my personal experience is that my back doesn't, just be hilarious. That my personal experience is my back doesn't handle bagging leaves. And I've got more leaves now than I ever had in Fairfax, Virginia, or in University City, Missouri. University City, we went to bags for garbage, and that worked fine. We tried it with leaves, it didn't work at all.
Well, it will if it's done properly. Like I said, I've seen
It
it
worked in
firsthand.
Huntsville, Alabama.
Yeah, it does work if it's done properly. It's just knowing how to do it, because a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll take the leaves, you do what they call a stockpile. People will come in and use it for mulch. They'll use it to put in their beds and such as well. I mean, we don't have the area to do that here, but that
Right.
is an alternative.
Just looking out at Alex Mountain, I see trees everywhere, and leaf fall here is pretty
You
significant.
won't let us cut them down.
Mea culpa.
Are you
Yes,
ready?
ma'am.
Yes, D. Gearing, 270 Covered Bridge. I am the only resident on that road that's there full-time, at least as far as I know. Most of that property is unimproved. And what I deal with on my particular spot is the leaves are coming down from Estatoa and all of that. They're in the ditches from the trees that are already there. Nobody's putting them there. And it caused my drain to plug up when we had a huge rain, and I had no control. So, from my perspective, bagging it up, I'm not gonna bag up the whole mountain.
No,
And
that's not what we're asking you to do. That, I totally understand where you're coming from, ma'am. That's not what we're asking. We're talking about in the residential areas, like right in front of your home, where you want it maintained. I mean, we have a lot of people that have huge yards, and some of the yards, you know, they may want to keep their leaves, you know, just stacked up for their mulch later on, and some people do that as well. We're not asking you to do, you know, the entire area like if you live in that type terrain, because we know you can't do that, but we're just trying to be realistic and come up with some alternatives in our residential, you know, lot parts is what I'm talking about, not just, because we have a lot of empty lots. I couldn't ask everybody to do that, that would never work.
well, and I understand that, but from my perspective, I'm saying what I'm dealing with is the result of all of this.
And I'm,
So how is that to be dealt with?
well, that's what I'm saying, we wouldn't expect you to do all that, but what we would expect for, you know, if you have a problem, and this is what we run into this year, and this is why it has got in the situation that it was in, and the guys are out, but they don't see every time the leaves are stacked up in a ditch. People, and if we don't get notified, we have no way of knowing.
Feedback,
Yeah, we
yeah.
got
And
two.
I want to clarify that I'm not proposing in any way that we do what some of the cities do, is require the homeowner, be thankful we have ditches and we can use the ditch, but,
Right.
and
And
the
we're just,
city
and we're
has to
just
work.
looking at alternatives at this point. You know, we don't wanna go out and spend, and I'm just guesstimating $40,000 on a piece of equipment if it's not gonna help us any more than the current leaf vac has. That would be crazy. I mean, and we're not trying to put it on the homeowners. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to get us a fix that is gonna be a long-term solution. You can throw money at something all day long, but if it's not gonna be feasible, why do it?
Thank you. I'm Carla Stahl. I live on Red Wolf Trail, and I have the same problem that Dee does, but in my experience, when the city does, or the crew does come out and clean, we asked them to clean our ditches last year, which all they did was dig out like an inch of mud. I'm talking like, be more industrious and go down to, it's my understanding, there's an actual culvert there. So clean all of it out, and then, you know, I don't really see that 56 miles of ditches, if we have 28 miles of roads, is that much
And on
for an
this agenda,
industrious crew of
right,
five.
and on this
So-
agenda, it was one of the items that we discussed previously was the ditch improvements and drainage.
Right,
And that is going to address, all this is gonna be encompassed in one, as much as
right.
we
But
may
they
not
have
think
to
it
clean it
will.
out properly. When they
Well-
came, they did a half-assed job in my opinion, so.
That's why, on item 5, as far as the improvement, is that we have two bids on coming in here and looking at the ditches and taking care of them and digging them down and making them so that we're not having all this problem.
Right.
But by the same token, it is our responsibility to keep them that way. If we're gonna spend the money,
Mhm.
then we're gonna have to take care of them. And that's up to the city and up to our superintendent to
Right.
see that this is taken care of. So it's just a circle, but that's where it is. We'll do it, we'll get it in, we'll take care of those ditches correctly, then we'll maintain them correctly. And if you find out that once this is all done, we've done all the ditches, we've notified everybody that everything is this way, we're going to take care of them. If you find that we're not, you call the city. You talk to a city manager and say, I live here, and they haven't done a thing to that ditch, and it's all plugging back up. And we'll take care of it.
It sounds more and more like equipment is not the answer. And maybe we ought to spend that $40,000 on hiring people
To come in and
We-
work,
that come in and
do some
manual labor, get it done. And then, so that ought to be one of the recommendations we talk about.
Yes, sir.
That's what I would put on the
Yes, sir.
table.
Yes, sir. And we may get to
We've
talking
been
about
through
this.
this leaf thing for,
I know.
I've been on the council, this is my 8th year, and I can remember talking about it at least 6 years ago. Maybe-
And it's
maybe
not going
7.
away anytime soon, so we
Yeah.
know it's something that is, it needs some attention, and we've got to get something done, because it's just getting worse and worse.
I think
Okay.
that
One more question, yes. Pam.
It's just Joy P.V. Aiken, 1282 Saddleback Circle. How old is the leaf blower?
The leaf vac that we have, let's see, I have that here,
6 years old.
6 years old.
Yeah, yeah.
It's only 6 years old, and it has, and like I said, it has been not working more than it has been working in 6 years.
Was it new when
It was
purchased?
new, yes, it was new. But the problem is that the equipment was purchased for something that it's not capable of doing. It was not thoroughly investigated.
It's the type that you run in the city where you don't have ditches and mud and limbs and everything.
Right,
It's not really for ditches, it's going down the side of the street and picking up your leaves. That's, if
You're
you wanna
right, where it's
know the
not,
truth,
that's it, you're exactly right, it's for.
improper use of that machine.
That's right. It would be more like a subdivision where you actually had the drainage, not the ditches, but actually curbing is what it's should have been used for.
I've seen it in both situations where the suburban leaf blowers come and just pick it up and it's not in a ditch. In Virginia, I had a big ditch out front and there was never any problem with that machine sucking it up. It was a bigger machine than we had. It just sucked better.
Where are you living now?
I'm living in Sky Valley
No,
now.
when you had this done,
Northern Virginia,
Northern Virginia.
yeah.
A lot of difference between a place that has no cool trees with all the limbs falling
With-
down, small branches that get down into your leaves,
Mhm.
than just being in the city where it's all nice and velvet. You just pile them all up and sure, anything you go. Your house vac could do the same
You're-
thing, but down here, you can't. And it's useless to compare Virginia to Sky Valley. And the circumstances of Sky Valley is leaves, limbs, and mud, okay? So,
So it's a combination of things. I
it
think.
is, and
We're
we're
short-
going to be taking care of, we got to take it one step at a time to take care of this problem. And as we do it, we go from A to B to C, finally we get it done. But to sit and say, oh, this that, we've had this back, and we had it for 20 years, well, all right, but we're gonna start taking care of it. And that's what this council is looking at now, is to take these problems that we know that we've had for a long time and take care of them.
My only point is that it's a combination of manpower and equipment. We need both. And if we
Okay.
needed somebody to get the branches out, that's fine, we'll do that.
All right, but you're jumping all over again with manpower. Money is what we do not have. We don't have the money to get 12 people working here in the summertime. We don't have the money to update our equipment. But we're looking at, and we're doing the best we can with what little we have, and we're trying to get the best piece of equipment that will do at least part of what we need to be done. And we're looking for also for part-time help to help us. But it's, I know Ella would love to just put an ad in the paper, we want to hire 15 more people up here for the whole summer and put them out with rakes and hoes and shovels, and clean the whole place up and don't worry about the money. But we can't. So we just have to do what we can with what we have.
I think it'd be beneficial if we could demo another machine and see if it fits our needs.
And Bonnell will do that.
And
They
there is
will.
also Old Dominion Brush Company makes leaf.
They do make one too?
I
Okay.
think the problem with the machine we have now, it's too big, the guy sits in a seat and with some controls tries to fit the vacuum into the ditch. The guy's driving the truck at a certain speed. If the leaf hangs up on a big rock, it pulls sideways on that arm, breaks the arm. It's just not practical for
It's
our
not
terrain.
conducive for our terrain, you're right.
Like a rear suction, you wouldn't get that
And that's why the
torque
guy
on the arm, so
recommended
it's
the rear
possible.
one.
If we
Yeah,
could demo some other machines, we may find that there is a good machine.
yeah.
And a good operating leaf vacuum in 10 minutes will do more than 5 men will in an hour. They can suck up a tremendous amount of leaves in just a few minutes, if it's the right machine.
Another thing that I think needs to be taken into account is that, as was stated earlier, this machine that we currently have is inappropriate for Sky Valley. The secondary part of this, as I see it, is that there's operator error in using this machine. And the operator error seems to be what's caused it to be down more than up. And instead of the crew or the city manager or the superintendent contacting Bonnell to find out why this is breaking, they just kept fixing it instead of finding out what was the primary problem. So any machine we get is gonna be useless if people don't know how to use it. And I think that if we've had this for 6 years and we've had it down more than up, that somebody missed this ball a long time ago about there's a big problem here and we need to address it. I guess I'm frustrated with the fact that it's been continuing and there's been no attempt outside of let's get another piece of equipment. Let's figure out what new stuff we can get. Well, if we had a helicopter here, we wouldn't need to go down and get parts in Seneca by car. But if you don't know how to operate a helicopter, it's useless to have it. So I think we're missing something here, so we need to figure out, and I think Moody, you've made a good point, is that find something that our crew knows how to operate and operate it correctly. And I just think we're just, to to me, it's just frustrating to just keep doing the same thing over again and not solving the problem. And part of the crew problem is to address the one comment that was here, is that, well, they came and they cleaned out a culvert, but they only took an inch of mud off of it instead of going down to the bottom. Again, that comes down to the operators involved. And, you know, yeah, you could have a great piece of equipment, but again, if you break it in the first 15 minutes that you're using it, or you don't use it the way it's supposed to be, you're still gonna have a lot of people that are in the city complaining and complaining and complaining. And nothing changes. That's the part that's frustrating for me. Nothing changes.
Is it a training issue, Al?
From, Paul Wheeler called this company to find out about, correct me if I'm wrong, and the way this is set up is, the way Moody just explained it to everybody, is that you've got somebody that's sitting in a spot that's removed from the ditch. It's a heavy arm, comes down and it sucks up. Well, if the wind blows 5 miles an hour here, branches and limbs, and even this time of the year, leaves fall. We have check dams in our ditches. We have, again, people who don't clean out their own ditches and expect the city to do everything for them because I pay taxes here. And when they put that down, it sucks up because it's a powerful motor. And it sucks up everything. Stones, limbs, twigs, and all of that jams the apparatus. And once it's jammed, they have to take it back, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, and they have to disassemble the whole thing, find out what caused the jamming, clear it, reassemble the whole piece, and then go back and do the exact same thing over again. We're never gonna get our ditches cleaned this way. It's never gonna happen. So we need something that's gonna work. What Paul said, the company said, was go back to the smaller unit and possibly have someone clean out or blow out the ditches of leaves. And if there are any limbs or branches in there, pull them out. So now you've got a situation like you had in Virginia, where it's basically on the road and all you're doing is sucking up leaves from the road. So you're not sucking up everything else that's in the ditch. Is it time consuming? Yeah. Can we get the ditches cleaned? Probably. We aren't getting them cleaned now. They're terrible. And I just think we're missing the boat on some of this stuff. It has to do with the proper use of the equipment we have. And if we don't have the proper equipment, it needs to be brought to the attention of the city manager, and we need to get the right equipment and the right training to use the equipment properly.
Well, from the discussions I've heard over the years, it's a labor-intensive job. To do it right, labor has to get out there, get the limbs and all the stuff out of the ditches, even if you have a piece of equipment to follow behind. So labor is going to have to be addressed. That's my opinion. And
Well, I just wanted to know, do we have a personnel review? Surely we do have a policy for the people who work on our crew. I mean, I don't want to impugn anyone's reputation, but it seems like some of them aren't nearly as industrious as they could be. So I'm wondering, what is our, who's responsible for that? And ultimately the city council and the city manager. But, who's responsible to say, guy 4 out of 5 is not doing a good job? What's our procedure for that? And surely there's a way to determine who is ambitious and who is not. I don't know what happens, I'm newer here, so go ahead.
Ma'am, I don't think that that's the problem. The problem is trying to use, everybody's focusing on the equipment,
Right.
which is not proper for the situation we have. It's gotta be labor, then maybe equipment of some sort. And the focus has not been, I think, proper. The focus has been on the machine all along. I've watched it jam, they're there to work, they're not trying to get out of work. It's just the crew is not focusing on cleaning the ditch of the hazards that prevent the machine from working properly to begin with. That's what I see from what I've watched.
And I would echo what Neil just said. The problem isn't the folks on the crew. It's the size of the crew and the competing demands for it. We're a bare bones budget government. And this particular problem takes both the right equipment and the right number of labor, whether it's not 5, maybe it's 7, I don't know, but we'll figure that out.
Yeah, we're actually looking at that already. I've already talked to a few of you in passing, and I've already been working on some ideas for this. Like we said, Public Works has gotta be our major issue this year.
Now, let's move on to item 7.
Okay, this is me again. Item 7 is, a polling location change. And you'll see in your packet, there was some information that was provided to you in reference to this. We have met with the, county election superintendent, which is Tammy Whitmire. In 2020, they're gonna have new machines. I'm sure most of you have heard from the state. Well, first of all, these machines are not even two machines are not gonna fit in City Hall with tables. So first, that's the main issue. The other issue is that, at her recommendation, she is requesting that we move our polling location from City Hall to the county. And I asked Karen to get this information together, and I'll sort of just go through it since you don't have a copy of it here, and just give you some idea what we're looking at. Just for instance, the special election that was held in March of this year, the cost of that election was $3,931, and we only had 39 votes that were cast in Sky Valley. A majority of our people go and they'll either do it by mail or early voting. We had, on election day, we had 3 that went to Clayton, because you now can go to either location. And we had 48 by mail and 85 for early voting. That was the total of 175 people that voted in that election. And when you take this into consideration that we had 39 people, and that, with this $3,900, that's over $100 per person for voting with that small percentage. And I'll just give you a general election. March was a special, so just to give you some idea, the November 18th election was $2,303. We had a total of 18 people that came in that day, and we had 30 that went to Clayton. We had 35 that went and actually had it by mail, but early voting was 159. So as you can see, our percentages for people going to vote early is way beyond what we actually have here where people come and vote. And what they're recommending is that we change our polling location from City Hall to Clayton to make it all one, and she would handle all of our election. Because what it would do, as you see, most of the majority of people already go to Clayton anyway. So it would just simplify it, and it would be cost effective for us as well.
It's a no-brainer.
Well,
If you want to, it's not worth spending a lot of time.
Well, what I need to do, just to give you an idea, what would happen is that if y'all are in agreement with this, what we would do is we have a resolution that is in your packet, and we would take this resolution and it would be in your packet next Tuesday to be considered at council for approval. And once it is approved, then I would have to run a notice in the paper once a week for 2 weeks prior to a public hearing day. And that's when the city would have a public hearing that would be during a council meeting. And at that time, they would vote on the approval of moving forward with this. And if we could get this done, we actually could do this year. Tammy is ready to go. I've already talked with her, and she would handle all of our election information, and we would be out of it. I think it would simplify the process for everybody involved. And to me, it's just, like Neil said, it's a no-brainer. It's cost-effective to move it.
What's the cost to the city if we go forward with having it down in Clinton?
It's gonna be,
It's a savings,
it's
not a
gonna be,
No, but is it going to cost us money for voting?
it still is gonna cost, you're still gonna have to pay costs, but it's gonna reduce it at least by 50%.
Right, by this amount here, right?
Right, because as you see, this special election cost us almost $4,000 in March. And then,
Yeah.
in the November general election was $2,300, so I'm just saying, an estimate of 50% reduction.
Well, Ella, you've hit on one of the clearest trends in this table, and that is that the cost of the election has gone from $1,500 to $2,300 to $3,900. What's causing that?
Well,
Why was the special election so
Because
expensive?
nobody else had an election but us.
Okay, so we bore the full cost
Because it
that
was
would
not,
otherwise have been
because
shared with
normally,
everybody else.
and our normal election cycle is when there is a general election.
Mhm.
Even though we have an
Right.
election every year,
Right.
there still is a general election, so
Right.
she is able to disperse the cost amongst the other cities. But since she had to do this just for us, that's why it was so expensive to do it.
What are some of the things that's in that cost?
In that,
Advertising,
in that,
manpower.
the manpower, because see, she has to have people that come in and do early voting, she has to have people that come in and work the day of the polls, you have ballots that you have to pay for. There's a lot of cost just in the ballot preparation as well. And with the new machines, that's gonna all change as well, so you could even be looking at this cost going up, if we continue to do it the way
So
we're doing it now.
basically, we would save the cost of having someone in Sky Valley.
Right,
Labor
and
cost.
that
that's
would,
essentially.
Otherwise, the cost would.
That's
right,
essentially
that's
what-
exactly it.
This is the voting machine that they're coming up with now, can't fit in there.
She
You
said
have to
it's
put
gonna
it
be
in
too
another
big,
door.
You
so,
have to go into the garage.
yeah.
Well, in most places, people vote in garages and churches and meeting halls, not in city halls. So that's another option for moving a location so that we can fit the two machines in it. My question is about the special election was a special case. And so that cost was exaggerated over what it has been in the past, I think.
Well, that was actually, that could have been even, more if she had not had the election that was for the SLOSS. It would have been
Right.
even more.
Excellent, yeah.
I mean, so you
Good
have
point.
to take that in consideration as well. I
What
mean,
was
this
the big
could have.
difference between 17 and 18?
The difference between 17 and 18 is because she had more cities participating that had elections that year than 18. I think and 18 may have been the only city that had one. Because see, in 16 it was canceled because we didn't have any opposition, so therefore we didn't have any expenses. Which you can't project that, I mean, but you have to budget it, each year regardless. And see, like, I think we had about $4,000, and see, I have another election this year that we've already almost maxed out our budget just for election. I mean, and that's some things you can't change, but there, some of the things that I've heard from even Tammy, that we could have avoided an election in November as
So
well.
all the other cities into Clayton now,
All of them are, yes,
we're
sir.
the only one
We're
that.
the only ones that, everybody else is moving towards this, yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay.
Everybody else has done it.
But this last election was midterm, so that had more people voting. This fall, it's not gonna be a midterm. So a lot of the folks that live and vote in Sky Valley that don't care about the city election won't be coming to the polls.
Well,
Overall,
we'll have a low turnout
no,
again.
I beg to differ with you on that, because
Okay.
more, our people tend to come out and vote pretty good. We're usually at 50
yeah.
to 60% every year. I mean, I've gone back and looked at the actual registered voters plus the percentage of voters. It actually is pretty good. You'd
Okay,
be surprised.
well, okay, so who would this change affect the most? Who are the folks that actually vote in Sky Valley at the city hall? Are they the working folks who find it convenient to vote, you know, first thing in the morning or late in the afternoon? Or is it just the handful of people who haven't managed to do an absentee ballot or?
That's
go
pretty
down to
much it,
Clay?
because most people come in, I meant to do this earlier and I forgot, or they, you know. And you do have a few people that like to come in and vote on the day of election. Well, they're gonna be in Clayton anyway, they can go and vote in Clayton. I mean, it's just that simple. I mean, it's, you know, when you start talking about ways to save money, to me, this is really something that would be beneficial for the city and our citizens, because they're gonna be down in Clayton anyway.
Okay, so, but all I'm saying is that you know, maybe the special election costs were excessive because of those unique circumstances. In 2017, it was only $26 a person.
Right.
And if that's a better indication, then,
Yeah, but you look at your total number of voters, you only had 152, but you had 175 even for a special election. And your general election, you had 242, which is the same thing we're gonna have this year, because we've got the same, you know, we're gonna have the same makeup, because we'll have mayor and 3 council members.
yeah.
And the more people you have running in a city election, the more turnout you have. It's not just that it's a general election or it's a midterm election or a presidential or whatever. You still, most of the time with city elections, you have people that are involved enough that they're gonna come out and vote for city elections.
Okay.
They'll do that. Some people will do a city election before they'll do a
Oh,
presidential.
absolutely. Yeah.
I think most people, if they realize they cannot vote in Sky Valley, they'll take advantage of early voting. It's not
I
a
think
big-
so
it's not a
too.
big-
I mean, and that's what
Not a
Tammy
big
said,
burden
most,
on anybody.
most people do that anyway. I mean, I can't tell you, I think I've voted once in the last 5 years, maybe on a election day.
The reason this bears consideration, and I understand we're in a very rural setting. You know, in the past, I think people have expected to be able to vote conveniently and close to home. Of course, we don't have the economies of scale in the Sky Valley, so it's sort of a budget issue. I just hope we don't get any cries of, oh, voter suppression.
No, sir,
We're
that's,
discriminating
and that's not,
against
and that,
people who
let
don't
me
do the work
reiterate,
they
that is
can.
not an issue,
Yeah.
because that's why the new machines are coming out next year. That's
Okay.
why the new machines, and the voter suppression does not exist in the state of Georgia, if you know the facts, so.
Okay, do you have to be over 65 to get an absentee?
No, sir, you do not.
Okay.
If you're 65 or older, they'll send it to you at your home.
Right, you can sign up, you can actually
free.
sign up with the registrar's office, and they'll automatically send you a ballot for each election.
Thank you, Ella.
Okay, let's move on to road striping.
Yeah, we've, I've gotten some estimates for road striping. This is rather expensive, and I know this is something we need to do. And my recommendation, and I know I keep lumping things together here, but I would recommend that when we start looking at getting somebody to come out and do our ditch draining, they're gonna have to do some side of the road maintenance as well. Why not include this all with that same contract? When we do it, just make it all, just as though it's not a paving contract, but it would be ditches, you know, right-of-way maintenance, shoulder maintenance, and striping all as one. That would be my recommendation, because the price that I got, it is rather expensive, but they said if you'll lump it together, they would give you a much better price. So that would be my recommendation, to do it all as one. It's the same way as that, like I said, as the way you do a paving contract.
What's the cost of just striping?
Just striping, if you do, striping on both sides of the road, it is 76 cents per foot, per linear foot. Yes, and you've got 520 feet in a linear foot, so, I mean, 5,280, I keep saying 520.
In a linear mile.
Yeah,
And
in a
you're
mile.
saying the same people could do the ditch cleaning and the,
Yeah, because I've talked to two different contractors that do all of this, and they would be willing, because what happens is that they come in, they clean the ditches, they, work on the shoulders, and they get it prepped, so when somebody comes in with a truck, which is what you want, you don't want one of these ride behind little dooflippy things that messes up. You want a professional to come in and do it, they'll give you a better contract price.
And these are painted stripes, not strips that are,
No, all that is reflective now. All of it has to be reflective per DOT requirements. Even on your local roads, it's required to be reflective.
the problem that I see is that the places where you clean the ditches are not necessarily the places that need road striping.
Well, and that is true,
Yeah.
but what they said we could do is that if we want to combine these, we could combine these and do certain areas.
They just get-
Because, and this is the other thing that we may need to look at, like he was talking about with Ellenberg that we did previously, we're not to exceed. That may be something we need to look at as far as moving forward with this. You know, we go through, we make our list. We see, just like on a priority list with road paving, we do a priority ditch maintenance, road striping list as well. And do it that way, and do the worst ones first. The other thing is, this striping does not take into consideration a center line. Most of our roads are small, so a center line is not necessary. After talking with some of the guys the other day, he said, because most people don't drive,
Yeah.
they're driving around anyway up here. So he did talk about that when I was talking with him yesterday, so just to give you an idea, and that's just, you know, that's my thoughts on it. Y'all are free to, you know, tell me what y'all prefer to do, if you want to go about this some different, you know, manner. But,
a question, Ella. On Alpine, which is only, you know, it was brand new 5 years ago,
right,
beautiful striping. On the shady side of the road, moss is growing on the paint. Is that normal?
yes, sir, because there's no sunlight hitting it.
Yeah.
That is normal. There's nothing you could do short of going out and spraying it with something to clean it, and it may do away with, Moody, you might know more about that, but I don't think it, I don't think it'll work, because it's just gonna grow back. Because the one thing that keeps them from turning is the sunlight, and most of Alpine is covered, so.
We could issue flat-bladed shovels to the homeowners and they could go sweep.
Good luck with that, huh? They might not like that.
one.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes, Ben.
Yes, Dee Garing again. Would that include the limit lines at the stop signs? There's a
Okay.
lot of those missing.
We could do that. We very well could do that, because we have talked about that, yes, ma'am.
Okay,
How many
let's move on
companies
to,
will do this?
number 9, surplus.
Neil's got his hand up.
I'm sorry.
How many companies can you get bids from to do this?
Actually, I've already talked to 2 already. They just need, mileage, ditch, as far as ditches, we need to get some list, and my understanding is that a couple of you are going to go out and look at this and get me some information. And once we get a better understanding, then I can reach out to these contractors and get estimates, but I would like to do at least 3. I've already contacted another company in, North Carolina as well to get their input on this. So, a
This is-
minimum of 3 is
And
not,
this is just for the striping.
no, I'm saying to do it all as once, is to do the ditches and the right-of-way maintenance, shoulders and striping all at once.
Well, I'm not sure.
Just get
I
the
think
prices,
if you
Neil.
went out, you'd need to get those bids separately. and combined.
But
Most
the
of them-
Just my
companies will
thinking
do a
is
bid.
of what, I don't think those two functions really work that well together.
Well, the contractors beg to differ with you, because they
Well,
like to do it
he
on.
wants the money, so he'll say anything to cut you loose.
Yeah. But Neil's right, if we're gonna bid it both ways, we need to do that at the same time, so they don't do sequential bids.
Oh, yeah, at the same time. I agree with that. Okey-doke.
Okay, surplus properties. James is not here, is he? No. So we have 6 items here that are, they're all just, everything here on these 6 items is just sitting out in the backyard.
Yes, sir, it's just some items that we can get rid of. I know we had talked about this previously. We have these items that I just need approval. They're, the one is the tractor was probably the only thing that would exceed the $500. The rest of them, we'd be lucky if we could get that. I just need approval to place these on the Gov Deals. I've already been in contact with GMA. This is something that GMA offers on their website. And we can, all you do is you put the equipment on there. If you want a minimum price, you list a minimum price and you leave it up for 30 days. It's sold as is and they're responsible for pickup, is the way you would do it. It really, it's a no-brainer because, to me, because otherwise the equipment's sitting there not getting used, taking up room when you can get rid of it, you know, and make you just a little bit of money on it, not
Would
a
we
whole lot.
also put an ad in the local paper?
You do, but you don't get a lot of response. I mean, we can do that, you know, the ads with Gov Deals are cheaper. I mean, we can do a surplus ad in the paper as well. I just need to know if y'all are wanting to move forward with this, we'll place it on the agenda for next Tuesday.
Ella, I was with Paul. Ella arranged for a tour of the Public Works equipment and operation for the new councilman. And Paul was there, and Moody was there, and I was there, and I saw every one of these pieces of equipment, and I agree 100% with that list, you know? Just get them out there, get them out of the way.
Right,
We
right.
make, you know, whatever we make, we make.
Okay.
Let's put this in for voting on it.
Next Tuesday, okay,
next
all right,
Tuesday.
and we'll add that to the agenda.
And we have any other business, anybody in the group here want to discuss? If not, I'll ask for an adjournment.
So moved?
Second.
Moved and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
So, Rich, when you went up to Colorado, where did you live?